Beautiful. Well, I was preparing this message tonight and I was going to talk about my confirmation. And there's a few people who have been recently confirmed here. I was hoping the other two would be here, but that's okay. That's okay. The funny thing was, thinking about my confirmation, I was like, that was a couple of years ago now. It came up on Facebook today that it was 6 years ago today. And I must be meant to talk about this today. If you're not familiar with confirmation, it's basically where a bishop of the diocese in the Anglican Church will come to confirm that a baptism has taken place. Now, if you've been baptised as a little baby, that's, I guess, your moment in the Anglican tradition and the Roman Catholic tradition to own the faith for yourself. That's kind of what we do. That's that sense of going, okay, these promises were made for me on my behalf when I think I was 4 months old when I was baptised. And then I had a chance when I'd come back into the faith and joined a church family and started going to Bible study and all that kind of stuff to go, yeah, I'm going to own this faith for myself. It's not just, that I grew up a little bit Christian or whatever. This is my faith now and I'm going to own it. I want to show you the photo from my confirmation. That's me with Bishop Peter. It was funny, I was confirmed on St. Peter's Day, so the feast day of St. Peter, at St. Peter's, East Maitland, by Bishop Peter. My dad's name was Peter, and he was at this. And Peter Middlebrook's here too. That's 5 for you. So there were a lot of Peters that day. And it was just a great joy. I didn't wear glasses in those days. That's a recent addition to the look. But that was a really lovely time. I wanted to show you this photo here on the left. This is not just a photo presentation of my confirmation, I promise you. But I wanted to show you this one on the left. Me at the Eagle Lectern at St. Peter's in East Maitland. I had to do the reading for my confirmation, and it was Paul's letter where he talks about, I am being poured out as a libation, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. We had that at the confirmations here as well. It's a confirmation reading. I want to show you that first photo because at that Eagle Lectern I was shaking so much that I had to hold on to it. I thought I was going to faint. I was having a bit of an anxiety thing, I think, because all my friends on that other picture were there to witness it. And this is the first moment I took to own the faith for myself. Now, if you're at morning church today, we were talking a little bit about that and how terrified I was to tell people I was a Christian, to tell people that I went to church. Now, they're all my workmates from my former life as a school teacher. And they came and supported me, but I didn't know what they would make of that, and it was terrifying. I was so scared. I was hanging on to that eagle for dear life, and everyone was like, wow, you look so confident, Kim. I can hide it well sometimes. But I was thinking about my confirmation, not just because it came up today. That was 6 years ago, so it's not that long. And I go, my God, my life has changed an awful lot since that day. But I wanted to share that for 2 reasons. The first one, to show our recent confirmees my confirmation. So I share that with you and the people who have been confirmed. But also to give you this little story that happened after this day. Now, this happened obviously on a Sunday, and about a week later, I was at the markets. There's a market day at Raymond Terrace, and I can't remember what I was doing there. It must have been something that the kids were at from my old school, so I used to teach at Raymond Terrace. And I could hear some Christian music coming from one of the market stalls, and I went, I'm going to practice being bold for Jesus and go and talk to this person, whoever they are. They're obviously a Christian. They're playing some Christian music. I'll go and say g'day and just see where they're at and have a bit of a chat. And we sparked up a conversation. The man who was playing the music, he was a young guy, and so we were talking about, our favourite Gospels. I said, I really love the Gospel of John. Yeah, me too, sharing all that kind of stuff. And at the end of our conversation, he said, can I pray for you? And I said, of course you can pray for me, no problem. And he said, and so he said a few prayers, and he said, and I pray that Kim will get saved. And I'm like, I just had my confirmation. What? I don't understand what's happening here, because I was new to being a Christian. I didn't really know. I thought, wasn't this part of me owning the faith? Anyway, it was just a funny little moment that happened after this big moment for me. He was such a lovely guy. He meant so well. But it propelled me to look into what we call sanctification. Sanctification, how we are made holy, how God does his good work in us to transform us, to make us new people, not just good people. Although he does do that too. But we're also made new people in Christ. And that's really the work of Christianity. I would argue that to not just be good people, important to be good, but it's important for us to allow ourselves to be made new people. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians, which we're not looking at today, but it's another letter, that if anyone is in Christ, they are a new creation. They are a new creation. Christianity calls us to be different, which is what can be scary sometimes. Which is why I was shaking so much in that first photo, because I'm like, my whole life is going to change now. And here we are. I didn't quite know this was going to happen, but certainly I knew something was changing. My life wouldn't be the same after this, and after that encounter with that young guy as well. The first point today, friends, is sanctification is a process. Now, I don't know about you, but the way I came to be a Christian was a long, slow, painful, joyful, but at many times painful process. And I didn't think for a long time I was making any progress. I'm like, I'm going to church, I'm going to Bible study, I'm learning more about God, but am I falling in love with God, which is one of the purposes of the Christian life. And of course we mean not the romantic, go on a date kind of love, but a deep love that overpowers all the other loves in our lives. We heard that this morning too at morning church if you were there. And there's a whole sermon in that in and of itself. But when I came to the faith really for myself, there was no moment for me like what happens to Paul on the road to Damascus. If you know the story, Paul's travelling along and he's going to Damascus and Jesus appears to him. And he says, Paul, why are you persecuting my church? And then Paul becomes a Christian and one of the greatest evangelists the world has ever seen. So he planted churches. One of them was in Philippi, which we're talking about today. Now, that didn't happen to me. I wish it did. Wouldn't that be great? That Jesus just appears to you and he goes, this is me, I'm the way. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen for a lot of people. Some it does, but often God gives us the ability and the grace to go and do that for others ourselves. But I'm impatient, and I know some of you know me, and you know that I'm impatient. I'm always looking for the finish line. I'm always looking for the moment where it says, right, Kim, you have achieved sanctification. You have done it. This is it. You made it. It's the end. You're good. But the frustration for people like me, and maybe like you, is that it doesn't work like that because we're on God's time, not Kim time. If we're on Kim time, we'd all be sanctified, we'd be good. Finish line, checkered flag, done. Now, if you know me, I'm a big reader. I've been trying to read a book a week this year, and a mentor of mine told me this week, I think I know why you're a big reader, Kim. And I said, well, are you going to enlighten me, or am I going to just have to guess? And he said, I think you think the answer is out there somewhere. It's out there. And of course, he's referring to the answer of the human experience, the answer to it. And of course, the answer is in the name, human experience. It has to be experienced you would have to experience through humanity. There's no answer out there. And he's right, of course, naturally, but on some subconscious level, the amount of reading, I'm seeking a finish line. I want to find the answer. But the human experience is experiential. You have to go through it. You have to allow it to shape you. And that's where it gets scary. I'm showing you that picture again because I was terrified in that photo. It's the same with God. It's the same with God. Being made holy is a process, and it's particularly a process of surrender. Love that word and hate it at the same time. It's bittersweet, that word for me, surrender. We are all made in the perfect image of God, but sin gets into our lives. It mars our image. It makes it cloudy. God then enters into our lives after we begin in the way of Jesus and conforms us back to his perfect image through a gradual process often. Sanctification is God's continuing work in us as believers. So, salvation is for the past, the present, and the future. If you excuse my nerd moment, we know that sanctification is a process because in the first manuscripts of the Bible, which are just the early versions of people writing it down, there are Greek words that tell us this. Sometimes in our translations of the Bible, there are tiny little differences in words that are lost because this is translated into English. But anyway, the Bible tells us that there are 3 Greek forms of the word saved, which is where we get the word sanctification. I'm not going to tell you what they are because you don't need to know. But the 3 forms of these are past salvation, present salvation, and future salvation. So you can say, I was saved, I will be saved, and I am being saved. So they're present, different forms of salvation. Now, in Philippians 2:12, which is the bit where Paul spoke about not to grumble, but he also says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Talk more about that in just a moment, working out salvation. But I want to draw your attention to that fear and trembling bit, because it sounds a bit like, my God, is God going to, scary, bring down his wrath on me? Not quite. Fear and trembling here, friends, simply means to stand back and marvel at God, be in awe of him, and to go, wow, the whole Old and New Testaments all point to the story of Jesus and the story of the church, which continues the message of Jesus, and me being part of the church and being brought into salvation through it. That's to go, whoa, all of this big story includes me. That's the fear and trembling bit. That's what I'm getting from that passage. It's a moment of awe, a healthy awe for God, because he's holy. It's important to be reverent of God, to go, you are holy, Lord. You love me, but you are infinitely holy. There's an awe there. And the working out bit is what I'm going to come to right now. Friends, we don't work for our salvation. It's a very subtle change, but it's important. We don't work for our salvation, but we're called to work it out. Really, really important difference. I want to make this really clear because I think Paul does too. We don't work for our salvation. We are tasked, though, to work it out. We're tasked, if you're like me, my burden is to be patient. But for you, it might look a bit different. But we're tasked to work it out, to think about it, to ponder it. I want to point out you can't earn salvation. You can't earn a way into heaven. The book of James in chapter 2 tells us that faith without works is dead. So that makes it sound like we need both, actually, to be saved. Paul's letter to the Ephesians goes on to say that every person who has faith is to produce good works according to God's plan. These works, however, are not a cause for forgiveness, but a result of forgiveness. We do our good works because we are loved and forgiven and saved and sanctified by God. That's where they flow from. So they don't contribute to it, but we do it because we love God. We do good works because we love God and we want people to know something about him through those works. So we can sum it up like this, friends. The Bible talks about how we are saved. And some people who study God and the Bible, we call those people theologians. They say this: working out your salvation has 3 parts: justification, sanctification, and glorification. And if you forget those by the end of the day, that's okay? But justification, sanctification, glorification. So you might think of that as past, present, future. Was saved, being saved, will be saved, that kind of thing. When we are justified, we are cleansed and saved immediately from the presence of sin. Does that sound to you like something we do in church? And if you are thinking baptism, you are correct. Justification at baptism. Then we undergo the process of sanctification, as I've spoken about. And then finally something called glorification, where the whole presence of sin is gone and we are in glory with God, which happens when we die. That's the glorification that we are looking forward towards when we die. So back to my friend who was praying for me at the Raymond Terrace markets to be saved. Was he right? Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, it's not wrong, but it's just a little bit confused maybe, or a bit muddled. He was right in the sense that he cared about me enough to pray for me. That was really important of him. That was really, really important. It was open. It was public. It was brave. I'm still talking about him, obviously, 6 years later. So it's made an impact on my life. I'm in awe of his courage, to openly pray for somebody in the middle of the markets. That's remarkable, Even now, I'm like, would I do that now? Possibly. I just asked someone to church about 2 hours ago, and they said no. So I go, sometimes I go, do I have the courage to pray for people? Even when, when I ask people to church, they say no. I don't know. So this guy was really courageous. Love him for that. Was I saved on the spot? Well, not in the way he was thinking, I'd imagine. I'd already began that journey at baptism. That doesn't mean it was over. I'd just begun the journey. I was now on my way through that process of sanctification to walking in the way of Jesus and letting Jesus mold me into a new creation, into his ways and into his will. And if you know, I know a few people that use this phrase, I'm not the same Kim I was then. That's a few Kims ago, right? That's a few Kims ago. I'm really not the same Kim I was 2 weeks ago, because that's the process of Jesus coming into our lives, sanctifying us and being part of our lives. So friends, I want to leave you with this from Paul's letter this week. Be patient. I may be just projecting my own impatience, but be patient. Take it from the most impatient woman around, that's me. Be patient. God is working. He's working on us. He's working on our church. He's working on you. I knew that would happen.
Disconnected.
I went too long, see? Disconnects if I go too long.
Be patient.
That's right, Ali. Be patient, speaker. God is working even on the laptop speaker. He's working on you, friends. We just need to surrender to his will because it is perfect. That will is perfect. We are continually being moulded and made into that perfect image by God's work in our lives. Amen.